Today is Saturday, February 28th, and Ayatollah Khomeini is no longer with us. Israel and the United States have attacked Iran, an attack that has been coming for quite some time, and today it has happened. In the morning, an Israeli strike package of 200 planes struck 500 targets across Iran in the largest single operation of the Israeli Air Force. The Israeli Air Force consists of about 300 planes, and 200 of them were involved in this airstrike, meaning that really all operational planes at the time partook in this operation. And they succeeded in decapitating Iran, in killing Ayatollah Khamenei and several other major leaders of the Iranian regime. They also targeted other um, targets, and we will analyze this airstrike and infer the strategy of the coalition of the United States and Israel. We will weigh Iran's counter options, what can they do in the present situation, and close with two possible scenarios of what happens next. But before we get straight into that, if you like this video, please consider uh, subscribing and hit the like button. Thank you. Now, first of all, obviously, this decapitation strike, this airstrike, had the major objective of decapitating the regime, which has now been confirmed just a few hours ago, just 2 hours ago to be precise, by Benjamin Netanyahu that Ayatollah Khamenei is no longer with us. That's what he said. And President Trump himself also confirmed this. So apparently there are pictures, images of the dead body of Ayatollah Khamenei. So he is confirmed to be killed. Um, he was the supreme leader of Iran, the religious and political leader of this theocratic regime of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so the next most powerful person in this hierarchy, in the political hierarchy of the country, would be the president, who is Masoud Pezeshkian. And he also was attacked in his residence. So it is not confirmed yet if he has been killed or not, but the airstrike has definitely intended to kill him. And we will see. Maybe by the time this video goes online, there's already confirmation that the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, has also been killed. And then there are two more confirmed kills, which are the Iranian Minister of Defense, Amir Nasir and the chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, Mohammed Pakpur. Both of them have been confirmed killed, and both of them are the leaders of, well, the supreme leaders of the armed forces of Iran. Iran has this curious arrangement that it basically maintains two armies. One is the army of the nation, so to speak, like the army that any country has to defend the nation, and this is headed by the Minister of Defense, who now is killed. And then there's the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is a separate army with its own air force and missile forces and everything, and quite significant in size, several 100,000 men. And this separate army is a very, very important force politically and economically within Iran. And its chief, Mohammed Pakpur, has also been killed. So the leaders of both armies have been killed. So the chain of command is severely uh, degraded now, since the decapitation has basically been complete, from the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei down to the army chiefs. Everyone is dead now in just one day. Now, obviously, the political consequence of such strikes, of this strategy, is that there will be power struggles within the Iranian elite if things go on that way, if strikes on leaders continue, and more leaders will be confirmed dead over the next few days. Obviously, there is, as in any system, an arrangement for succession, but it's quite complicated because, like, the highest leader, the supreme leader, is elected by a body like the body like the Council of Guardians. That's what it's called, of theologians like Islamic scholars, Shiite scholars who among themselves elect the next supreme leader. And obviously, in times of war and times of constant air attacks, it will be difficult to gather and quickly appoint a successor. Obviously, there are also different candidates that are considered to be candidates for succession. For example, the son of the late Ayatollah Khamenei, but he faces opposition. There's no like one undisputed candidate that could take over without any other faction within the Iranian regime objecting. So there are huge objections towards the son of Khamenei, exactly because he's the son, and effectively this would make the Iranian Islamic Republic basically a hereditary system, almost like a monarchy, where the son follows the father in highest office. So decapitation was successful, and that was just one element of a three-pronged approach of this massive airstrike. 200 planes, 500 targets hit. Not all of these targets, obviously, were decapitation strikes, high leaders. There are two more elements to it. One is SEAD, meaning suppression of enemy air defense, and the other is concerted strikes on ballistic missile launchers of Iran. And both of these target sets carry their political consequence and the rationale behind them. And we'll just go quickly over them. First, suppression of enemy air defense obviously is an absolutely vital first target for any intruding air force in hostile airspace. Iran is said to have around 130 to 150 SAM batteries left, surface-to-air missile batteries. This would amount to a total of around 1,000 launchers. I mean, obviously, these are estimates. The Iranian air defense system has been severely degraded already in the 12 days war in June last year. And that was Israel by itself back in these days. Now it's Israel backed up by the Americans, who basically more or less double the offensive power of Israel. So Israel has around about 200 strike planes that they can use, and the Americans have also relocated around that number of very modern high-tech fighter jets to the Gulf region to partake in the bombing campaign. But not only that, they also have gathered an impressive array of naval force in the region. There are obviously the two aircraft carrier battle groups, the one Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea, and the other the Gerald Ford battle group in the Mediterranean, east of Cyprus, where this is located right now, as of now. Both of these aircraft carriers boast around 70 to 80 aircraft and an escort of 4 to 5 destroyers. These destroyers are armed with long-range cruise missiles, like the Tomahawk cruise missile, and can strike land-based targets from as far away as 1,500 miles. Also in the area, there are said to be Ohio-class submarines equipped with the same Tomahawk cruise missiles. Each of these um, missile submarines can load up to 160 Tomahawk missiles. So in total, there are 600 to 800 American Tomahawk missiles in the region that can be launched at Iran. And these Tomahawk missiles are obviously a very good and appropriate measure to pick out um, enemy air defenses, SAM batteries from far away. So the way it goes about is first, obviously, having a cyber attack to interrupt communications between command centers and the SAM network. Then you have a barrage of cruise missiles, sea-based and also air-launched from American bombers in the area. And then there's the first spearhead of fighter jets, of fifth generation stealth fighter jets of the F-35 model that Israel has, and the American Air Force obviously as well. It's an American plane. F-35 and F-22 air superiority fighters. They go into Iran and destroy the SAM batteries, the enemy air defense, to clear the way for the more vulnerable fourth generation jets. So these are non-stealth and older designs like the F-16 going back to the 1970s. And these are very capable planes. They have a lot of ordnance that they can carry and do great damage, but they are more susceptible to anti-air defensive systems, anti-air missiles, which means that the air better be clear before they enter the fray in order to avoid outsized casualties. And it's interesting because the topic of casualties is obviously the bottleneck from a political point of view in America. Trump has started this war without much public support in the United States. About 70% of Americans, according to latest polls, say that it's not a good idea to attack Iran. And yet the president ordered this attack. If everything goes well, just like with the successful snatching operation of President Maduro of Venezuela just at the beginning of the year on January 3rd, think about it, it's just eight weeks ago. And now we are having a different operation, like basically the other side of the world. Things are moving pretty fast. And obviously, if an Iranian operation goes as quickly and successfully as the Venezuelan operation has gone, then there won't be many objections in the United States, policy-wise, from Democrats, Democratic opposition, or like from broader civil society. However, if there are casualties among American service personnel, it will become a political issue for the Trump administration. We'll return shortly to that, but just to also highlight what does it mean for the Iranian side if the Americans go in and destroy the air defense systems to the last battery, so to speak, means that really the Iranians now know there's no hiding, there's no protection. The Americans and the Israelis can reign at will in the airspace and basically strike whatever target they like. This adds to the general confusion and sense of insecurity that already has been created by the decapitation of the highest leaderships and the ongoing decapitation strikes on other high leaders, I imagine, which will be carried out in the foreseeable future. Now, the third element of the airstrikes, of the targets of the airstrikes, not only the decapitation strikes, not only the strikes on enemy air defense. The third element is the strikes against Iranian ballistic missile launchers. So there are different estimates of how many ballistic missiles do remain in Iranian stocks. Estimates range from 2,000 to 4,000 missiles and even beyond at some, let's say, more outlandish estimations. These stocks have been depleted by the missile barrages that have been fired on Israel in the 12-day war back in June, and also in 2024 when there was an exchange between Iran and Israel. As well as have the launchers. They have been depleted because really the launchers are the bottleneck. If you think about it, you may have as many missiles if you like in some underground bases and stockpiles. But if you don't have launchers to actually launch these missiles at your enemy, they will not be very useful. And here again, there are no reliable estimates, but a good estimation would probably be that the Iranians managed to replace the losses they have sustained in the 12-day war in June of last year and have now reached again the roundabout number of about 500 launches. So there are 500 launches to be taken out from the Israeli and American point of view, because if they are not taken out, they can do serious damage. And there we come back to the casualty issue. That's a very important part of the rationale of this operation from the American perspective, not so much the Israeli perspective, because obviously, while they're not keen on suffering losses, they're not as sensitive as the American public would be. If we can infer from an earlier example what kind of damage these ballistic missile attacks can do, we look no further than the Iranian missile strike on the Al Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar in January 2020, when in retaliation of the assassination of Qasem Soleimani by the US, the Iranian leadership launched a missile strike on said airbase, on Al Udeid airbase, which is the biggest in the region, the biggest US airbase there. And they warned the Americans that these missiles would be incoming, so as to avoid real casualties and thereby forcing the Americans to retaliate and escalate further. So what really happened was in this instance back in 2020 that the Americans were warned. All personality was safely hiding in bunkers and seeking protection there. And 11 missiles hit the base. Now, from these 11 missiles, there was reported 110 lightly wounded American servicemen. So one in average, obviously it's an average, that one missile causes brain concussions and light wounds, light injuries in about 10 well-protected servicemen. Um, Now, this was back in 2020 when this was warned and, so to speak, almost coordinated action between Iran and the US. There was no attempt on intercepting the missiles, which, of course, now will be different. There is a huge array of air defense batteries um, gathered in the region. There have been several Patriot batteries flown in from the United States. There are THAAD batteries, meaning special anti-ballistic batteries, which are really high tech and very few in number. And about a third of these THAAD batteries that are in service of the United States Army, or armed forces rather, because I think they're on the Air Force actually. Um, One third of them are deployed in the Middle East. All the Middle Eastern countries, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they all boast their very impressive domestic um, air defense systems with a lot of Patriot and THAAD batteries. So all of this kit is US provided, but it's operated by the Gulf monarchies, by the Saudis, by the Israelis, and um, and it's there. So it provides air defense for the American installations in these Gulf countries. So there's a significant presence of air defense, and as was in Israel back in the 12-day war. In the 12-day war, Israel intercepted about 85% of the incoming missiles. So if we now just, you know, do a quick calculation, take maybe the upper bound of possible Iranian missile stocks, say putting them at 4,000 missiles. And if we then subtract an 85% interception rate, that would leave us with 600 missiles getting through. And assuming that every missile causes maybe 10 lightly wounded soldiers, or let's just say 10 missiles you would need to get double penetration hit, like at the same spot to actually penetrate the bunker and actually kill the people, the personnel inside there. Then you would, like of 600 missiles, maybe 60 would have a double hit and kill the people inside. And if each of these 60 kills 10 people, so you'd be at 600, 600 US military, KIA military death casualties, which would be huge if you think about it in comparison, for example, to the Gulf War in 1991, when this 4-day operation, which completely wrecked and destroyed Iraq, a major country at the time, caused only 147 casualties. So the Iranians can do a lot of damage with their ballistic missiles. And this is a real threat for especially the United States, because internal political pressure would mount if the body bags return home, especially if they return home in significant numbers. And we're talking not about scores, but about hundreds of killed American servicemen. So that's really now brings us to what can Iran do? I mean, what are the options that they can do? I mean, the one thing, basically almost the only thing that they can do is rely on their ballistic missiles to do the damage we have just discussed. And as we have already also discussed, the Israelis and the Americans do everything they can to just search and destroy all the launchers they can find as early as possible to just avoid that scenario. So once the launchers are all eliminated, the missiles cannot get off the ground, and American troops will be safe. Iran has already retaliated and launched several volleys of missiles. Interestingly, they haven't concentrated on one target, like one base, and do a saturation attack, basically to uh, achieve as many leakers, so to speak, so missiles getting through as possible. Rather, they have attacked many targets, basically all over the region, in Israel, in Jordan, in Iraq, and in all the Gulf countries. So from Kuwait to Bahrain to Qatar to the United Arab Emirates and to Saudi Arabia, they have attacked American bases all across the board, basically forcing the Gulf states into the war as parties, because Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states were not very keen on having that fight right at their doorstep, and they were all trying to stay out of it. But now with Iran attacking their national territories and airspaces, with some missiles even reportedly hitting hotels in Dubai, there's not much that the Gulf states can do to stay neutral. They have to defend their own territories. And so all the aforementioned very significant air defense arsenals of these countries are now at the disposal of the coalition of Israel and the US. And that means that really Iran has scored a self-goal. I mean, they've just effectively doubled the airs, the air defense capabilities of the coalition that's attacking them. But nonetheless, missile strikes in the hope of inflicting casualties is basically one option for Iran, which is, as I said, difficult in the face of the defense and in the face of the determined efforts to eliminate the launches. Then there's the other option, which Iran routinely threatens and floats, which is to close the Strait of Hormuz through mines and missiles. Now, the Strait of Hormuz at the entrance of the Persian Gulf is a very critical nautical node of traffic. About 20% of global oil production, or about like 20 million barrels a day, pass the strait. So if it's blocked, then obviously this would not be good for gold for oil prices. They would go up quite significantly, and this is obviously quite something of a leverage that Iran has as a bargaining chip. But we must also consider who is actually affected by that action if it should happen, if Iran decides to close the Strait of Hormuz. Because the oil that's leaving the Persian Gulf is overwhelmingly going to Asia, and particularly to China. So China being an ally, so to speak, of Iran, will not at all be very happy with such a course of action. While America is self-sufficient in oil, they actually export oil, and American allies in Europe and the Far East, especially Japan, can rely on emergency um, deliveries of American oil. So while generally speaking, prices would go up worldwide, um, it's yet to be seen if prices would go up in the US, where oil is abundant and the Middle East really doesn't quite feature so much in oil supply. So the options that Iran has, in conclusion, firing volleys of ballistic missiles to inflict casualties and closing the Strait of Hormuz, both are either severely impeded or have their serious drawbacks because they alienate the few allies left to Iran. So now, having reviewed the target set and strategy of today's airstrike on Iran, and having reviewed Iran's possible countermeasures and counter moves, what's going to happen next? What are the scenarios? There are basically two scenarios that could um, unfold, and that's really just how long does the conflict drag out? So there's a long scenario, and by long I mean it drags out a week or longer, or there's a short scenario. Now, the long scenario is what Iran would want because even though it has limited options, it gives it time to inflict casualties, to rally what little it has left in the way of proxies in the region to fight asymmetrical operations against Israel and the United States. And if the conflict drags on long enough, the coalition of the Israelis and the US will find it difficult to restock their um, their munitions, their ordnances. So the missiles, the bombs that they spend, um, they will be difficult to be replaced as the longer that whole thing goes on. And if it goes longer, say more than a month, um, there will be a possibility that Iran's allies, meaning Russia and China, might come to the rescue, at least covertly. So while China may not be completely 100% interested in aiding Iran, especially if it closes the Strait of Hormuz, Russia might be. Russia might be interested because higher oil prices in the world are good for Russia. Less supply of oil from the Middle East to China means more Chinese dependency on oil from Russia. And so Russia would have some sort of interest in prolonging the conflict in Iran. And Russia is one of the prime, if not the one and only prime producer of cutting edge SAM technology. So the S-400 is widely regarded to be the best air defense, ground-based air defense system in the world. And the Russians could uh, clandestinely, covertly provide such uh, SAM systems to Iran or what's left at this stage of Iran to contest the airspace over Iran, to actually inflict casualties on uh, American and Israeli air forces, aircraft in the area. And if this happens, there would be a potential for escalation because um, these weapon systems, I mean, obviously that's a hypothetical right now, and we're talking about maybe in 1 to 3 months time frame. These weapon systems would not be operated by Iranians because it takes ages, about a year, to train on these to operate the systems. So they would be operated by little green men. And obviously, if then these systems get hit and taken out, and there would be casualties, and there is the potential of escalation. I mean, we don't want to speculate too far into the future, but this is potentially a dangerous scenario. But there's the good news, which is there's another scenario, which is the short scenario. And the short scenario means that the whole thing may be over by tomorrow. Because what's clearly happening within Iran is there is a lot of intelligence infiltration going on. That was already pretty obvious in the 12-day war of last summer in June 2025. The extreme infiltration of Mossad assets in Iran, they could basically operate almost freely and do whatever. And it's quite plausible that there are contacts between these embedded intelligence assets in Iran to Iranian military leaders, political leaders. And if these contacts already exist, it's quite plausible that there will be negotiations, there will be some agreements behind the scenes about some general, some minister, some lesser political figure taking over the system and making peace and basically acquiescing to all kind of American demands, which means no nuclear weapons, no nuclear program whatsoever, not even for civilian use, no ballistic missiles program, and no support for terrorist organizations, meaning the proxies that Iran has built up over the last 1.5 decades in the region. So these are the grand strategic aims that the United States and Israel seek to achieve with their military mission. And they have been refused by the Iranian regime so far. But that may not be the case. It needn't be the case in an arrangement similar to what has happened in Venezuela, where just someone from within the regime takes over and basically does America's bidding. And so while not technically a regime change, all aims would be met, and Trump could go home and declare victory and say, mission accomplished. It remains to be seen what's happening. The things are unfolding very, very fast, and we will continue to watch out for new developments. If you like this analysis, please stick the like and subscribe button. And as always, thank you very much for watching and have an outstanding day.